Welcome, everyone. Happy 605,000th day of quarantine. It feels like it's been a long time, that's for sure.
Yep.
Today we have Patrice Carroll joining us to talk a little bit about behavior. How are you doing, Patrice?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're really happy to have you here with us. I know, most of us, our loved ones during the day, they're typically at school or in a day program. So
Yeah.
having them home 24/7, it can be a lot. There's no respite in here. So getting to talk to you today a little bit about behavior and how we can better manage our loved ones' behavior it's a really welcome time to do that. Just a few housekeeping items for everybody who is joining us. We really want this to be an interactive webinar. So Patrice is going to give a short presentation. She has a few slides. These slides will be available on the blog after the webinar. After she's finished the webinar, we're going to open this up to questions. So right now you are welcome to send us a little introduction, say hi with the chat panel, and start sending in your questions whenever you are ready. If you would like to be taken off mute so that you can speak with Patrice directly, please still send me your question, but then use the control panel to raise your hand. This way I know that you would like to speak, but it also allows me to kind of topic cluster the questions a little bit so that we can keep, kind of a flow to the webinar today. So with that said, I'm just moderating today, so you're going to hear a lot less of me than Patrice. Patrice, I'm going to let you go ahead and jump right in and get started with your slides.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. So you can go on to the next slide.
Great. There you go.
Perfect. So this is a hard time for everybody. It's a really hard time for people with kids, and it's an extraordinarily hard time for people with kids who are used to and thrive in a very structured environment, who are really social, so going to school is usually a really cool thing for them, and who want to know what's happening next. So if your child needs a strict routine, then do it. If your child is someone who is happy not to be at school because they don't like the routine, then it's okay to keep it loose if that's what works best. One of the benefits of this is you're not overly concerned right now about how your son or daughter needs to fit into the larger group. So don't spend too much time worrying about how to reacclimate them into school once it starts, because the truth is we don't know when that's going to be. We can be pretty certain it's not going to be 2 weeks from now. So it's going to be hard no matter what. So since there's no predictable end in sight, there's no point in trying to plan for it. Be kind to yourself. Be good to yourself, because you're not used to, and we're going to talk about education in a second, but you're not used to having your kids home all the time. Their siblings aren't used to having their brother or sister home all the time. So it's very, very important that you take whatever time that you can possibly get out of the day to do something for yourself, even if it's just a hot shower and 5 minutes away from the kids. This isn't a normal time. This isn't summer vacation where you have activities planned and people to go see. This is a time that nobody has ever lived through. So you need to be patient with yourself. You need to be realistic with yourself. Our kids are going to absolutely feed off of how we're feeling. My suggestion would be to keep the news off, especially now because they're starting to talk about food shortages. There are things that you can set up in your house that will make things a little easier to get through the day. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Always looking for the positives. I know that on the worst of days, this can be really hard. But the truth is, your kids go through so much of their life hearing about what they're doing wrong. And we, I think, as a community, don't spend enough time talking about what they're doing right. Even if it's as small as praising them for putting their socks on correctly, it doesn't matter. As much as you can say what's good and what's going right, that's going to oftentimes turn their day around what I think that we need to remember, all of us need to remember, we need to remind ourselves of this every day, is that your kids are trying to do their very, very best. At their core, they're really, really good kids. They want to follow the rules. They want to make you proud. And then stuff gets in the way. And our job collectively is to figure out what that stuff is and move it out of the way so they can have more good days than bad days. One of those things that I think we need to address in every environment is that the sensory issues they have are real. I have seen kids go from a completely different presentation just from changing white light bulbs to soft yellow. Look around your environment and see if there's anything that could be adding to their anxiety. A lot of times your kids like to wear the same shirt, the same shorts, no underwear, no socks, and you don't want to send them out to school that way, but they're not going to school. So right now, your primary goal is to get through the day safely. If wearing the same outfit every single day is going to add to getting through the day safely, let them wear the same outfit every day. Wash it when they go to bed. These are things that you don't have to worry about so much right now because they're not leaving the house. You could put together, and I know we talked about this a little bit last week, you could put together the most perfect day, the best schedule. You could have put a lot of work into it, and it just isn't working out. You have to be okay with putting that aside, with saying it's not going to happen today, to be flexible yourself, because you know it's going to be really hard for your child to be flexible, to put that aside and say, we're going to do something else instead. And again, your primary goal is to get through the day safely. So there are some days that are going to go better than others. If you're having a day that isn't going so well, it might be way more iPad time than you wanted. And then you start again and try again the next day. Susan, we can go to the next slide. So again, we talked about this a little bit last week, but I think this is really, really important. Don't compare yourself and don't think of yourself as homeschooling. Homeschooling is an extremely well thought out, highly researched. There are so many resources for people who homeschool. It's very social. You are not homeschooling. If you're comparing yourself to people who are homeschooling, you're just going to be disappointed in yourself. People who homeschool have months, sometimes years to plan what they're going to do. You guys had a couple of hours, right? They went to school one day and all of a sudden school was canceled and they haven't been back. And we don't know when they're going back. So don't put yourself in that category. You are trying to do the best you can do to get through the day. That's where you're at right now. So if you can do an hour a day of some sort of education, that's amazing. Some kids love school and will want to do it more, but for the kids who don't, call it something else. Don't call it academic time. Don't call it education. If they love animals, make everything that you're doing about animals and call it fun with frogs. And for that hour, you're counting and doing creative writing, whatever you can get them to do based on their interests, do that. It's not realistic to think that they're going to be doing what they would have been doing if they were in school, because they're not in school. So it's okay for you to put that aside. It's okay for you to spend the next several weeks or however long we're doing this, just doing review of what they learned last year and the year before. Again, our kids spend so much time hearing what they're not doing well. This is a nice opportunity for them to do something that they've already mastered and feel really good about themselves. Set your own expectations, not someone else's. I can't stress this enough. I'm well aware that there are parents who are on social media and talking, and they have, they're so happy that their child is home and everything's going great, and they gave their daughter lavender to sniff and a pistachio to eat, and now she's learning Japanese. I know that those parents are out there. I wish they weren't, because there are other parents sitting at home thinking my child is reading 3 grade levels below his typical peers, and maybe if I just gave him a pistachio, right? And that's kind of what you set up. You set up this competition. And you've heard me talk about this competition before, and it's not healthy. You are exactly what your child needs right now. Your child is exactly where they want to be. We'll start there. If you start off in a place where you're wishing they were doing more or wishing you were better, you're constantly going to be let down. So we're going to start in the place where you're exactly who your child needs and your child is exactly where they need to be. I think that's Susan. I think that we already talked about that last point. So I think we can go on to this. And again, we covered this a little bit, and this is something that I think every morning you need to wake up and promise yourself that you're going to do this, because it really will make a difference. That every single thing you can praise and you can call out that's good, do it. Ignore what you can. Unless it's a safety issue, ignore it. Again, at their core, your child is really, really good and they want you to be happy. So the more that we can show them what we like, the more they're going to do that. Again, taking care of yourself, and we covered that. I hope that we'll be able to talk about that a little bit when people start asking questions. Being realistic. This is something that, again, when you have a schedule and it's a perfect schedule and you did everything right and it just isn't working out, getting through the day safely is the most important thing that you can do. Other things come under that. Yes, you want to make sure that that your kids are getting some sort of curriculum in there, some learning, not just sitting on the iPad, not just sleeping, but you have to be realistic about what you can and can't do. And just remember that the end goal is always to raise self-esteem and lower anxiety, and however you can manage to do that. I think we can move on to the last, Susan. Okay, so we talked about not comparing yourselves to others. One thing that that I would like to cover, because it's something that I don't think that we talk about enough. When you have kids home and they have siblings, this is something that needs to be addressed, I think, as frequently as we can. That your child, the child you have with PWS, is not the most important person in your family. Everyone is equally as important. And speaking as someone who also works with people with PWS in their older years, I can't stress enough the importance of siblings in their lives as they're aging. You want to pay close attention to whether or not you're putting your child with PWS with their needs above the needs of your other kids. They have more needs than your other kids, but they're not more important. You want to avoid their siblings being resentful, because they'll be less likely to be involved later in life when they really, really need them. And I'm assuming we're going to be talking about that once we go into questions. At least I hope we are. And you have heard me say this before as well. If it's not working, stop doing it. We hear things that, kids with PWS need a strict routine. They love puzzles and, they hate surprises. And there's parents sitting there saying, my child doesn't like a routine and they love surprises and they hate puzzles. So just because people say this as a generalization about the syndrome doesn't mean it applies to you. And if it doesn't apply to you, don't do it. And that's really, those are the basic things that I wanted to cover before we went. This is just general things that I wanted to cover before we went into the specifics of what people want to know. So Susan, if it's okay, if we can go to kind of the group.
Yeah, we're absolutely going to open this up to the group. So whatever behavior questions you have, Patrice, she's here today to answer those questions. Patrice, having listened to your previous podcast and the webinar that Elizabeth Roof did last week, it's been so incredibly helpful for us. Today is day 2 of remote learning, required remote learning, mind you. And
yes.
I looked at the schedules that the teachers gave us, and I nearly lost it yesterday. I might have lost it. I probably lost it about a month ago, to be frank.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I threw up my hands and said, this is not going to work. There
Yeah.
is no way
Yep.
that I can give my son a schedule that says we're going to do this worksheet and then this and then this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got out a bunch of index cards and I put down the activities. I said, okay, we're going to work on these 6 activities today. And then I put out
Yep.
3 break cards and I put them all on the table and I said, pick one. And then,
Yep. Yeah.
and he's like, oh, I get to pick the order I'm doing these things. I said, sure, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. You pick one.
Right.
And then I could
Right.
see that he was starting to get a little uneasy. And you came into my head and I said, okay, we have 6 activities. You get to pick one you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he bought into this because he got to pick the order that he got to do things in.
Right.
He got to pick something he didn't want to do. And he got all of these breaks whenever he wanted them. So I lost about half my hair yesterday, but we got through the flashcard. And today's day 2.
And once they're in that routine, they'll want to keep doing it.
Well, let's hope, right? We're only on day 2, but I felt like
right.
it wasn't easy, but we made it through. And like you said, I threw up my hands and I said, okay, this, when one thing's not working, throw it out, try something else. The kids are pretty resilient. All right. So we do have a couple of questions coming into the queue. I just want to remind everyone, if you want to ask your question directly to Patrice, I will take you off mute. I just need you to raise your hand. But please, if you could type out your question for me ahead, I can just kind of get the questions in order a little bit for Patrice, and then I'll run through them as best I can. And I'm just scrolling through here. All right, so we've got a question. A lot of advice that's been going around for the mental health is to control what you can. There are times in the past few weeks that I have let some things go or let my daughter have her way in certain things because I see it as a way of letting her have some control. Things that I would hold my ground on perhaps in normal situations. Is this the wrong approach? Am I setting myself up to problems down the line? I think this is a really common question that parents have.
Yeah.
If you let too many things go, the kids need black and white. They need boundaries. So where do we set them? Where can we be flexible? Where do we need to be more rigid?
Sure. So one of the things that I think we need to give them a little more credit for is understanding that things are different in different environments. So we have 40 some odd kids who live on campus, right? When they go home, things are different and the rules are different and the food is different and the expectations are different. And then they come back to school and they go back to the rules that are at the school and they're actually fine with it. I think that we will be pleasantly surprised that when this is over, we are going to be able to say those were pandemic rules and these are rules for now. And I think they're going to be okay with that. If your day would have been completely ruined by not giving into that, that wouldn't have solved anything. You're better off having a good day and giving into some things than holding your ground, taking all that control away from her and having a terrible day. She learned more, and not in a bad way. I know people assume that these kids can be really manipulative, and I don't agree with that. I don't think they're manipulative. I think that they are put in a position where they feel so out of control that they react to the environment around them. And I don't think that if you give into that, I don't think that that's something later on that they're going to say, I was really upset, I did something wrong, and they gave in, and so I'm going to do it again. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more in the moment. And I think it's one of the things that's so amazing about them is that as a society, we spend millions of dollars in self-help groups and books and all these things to try to be more in the moment, and they're already there. They are living in the moment every single day, and I think it's something that's really, really cool about them that we don't tap into enough and don't give them enough credit for. So I think what you did was perfectly fine, and I would do the same thing.
Awesome. Earlier you talked about siblings and prioritizing them as much as our loved ones with PWS. We've got a question here about sibling behavior. Our siblings are around our kids with Prader-Willi more than they've perhaps been with them. I
ever.
think,
Yeah.
patience is a commodity right now. Most of us are lacking it. What do we do
Yep.
with our siblings who are lacking patience for
Yeah.
our person
Yeah.
with Prader-Willi syndrome,
Yeah.
who are not showing empathy, who are not being kind, and are perhaps
Yeah.
snapping? And how do we help
Yep.
them?
So this is a really hard time for siblings because they're used to being able to get away, right? All day they're in school. They can go to their friend's house. They can go do activities or sports or clubs or whatever they're doing. And really in the past, if you think back on 3 weeks ago, they probably had a couple hours tops a day with their sibling. And now they're with them all the time. So I know families, I suggest very strongly that there's some sort of a safe place set up for them to go to get away in the house. And I know they can't leave and really go anywhere, but I've known families who have bought RVs and put them outside for the kids, for the siblings to spend time in. There's another family who bought a used tent and put it in the backyard and had activities out there just for the siblings to go to get away. I think it's important to be really compassionate towards their siblings right now because they've lost their school, they've lost their friends, they've lost their activities. They're in the house all the time, and they're with somebody who can be really challenging to be around, and they have nowhere to go. So I would very much suggest that if you can set up some sort of a place where they can go, just them, if it's safe to do so, let them have a lock on their door so they can at least go to their rooms. Because this is probably harder on siblings right now than it is on anybody else. So I'm not surprised that patience is wearing thin and that they're not being empathetic. I think that those things will come. Those things definitely come with age. And those things will also come if they're able to get away a little bit, even if it's just a perceived away, because I know they can't leave and go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've observed in our own home, just some of the snappiness from the younger siblings. So I can empathize for families who are struggling with the sibling dynamic.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mandy had a great tip that I thought I would share with the rest of us. She says that they're now in week 3 of schooling, and the first week they just did work that her daughter wanted to do. They kept it really, really simple. Then in week 2, they added a few more bits and pieces. And now that they're in week 3, they've been able to work into perhaps some more harder skills. It sounds like, Mandy, you followed a lot of what Patrice was saying, which was really encouraging success in those first early weeks and giving a lot of praise. And now it's starting to pay off.
Yeah.
We have a question about self-soothing behavior. This mom, her son is 6. And he loves to shred all kinds of paper. It seems to be his self-soothing activity. So what are your thoughts around letting him shred papers, magazines, old books in a designated spot? Is it something that should be limited, or how do you feel about that?
The only time I would limit a self-soothing behavior that isn't harmful to them or to someone else is if they're doing that instead of any other activity during the day. So if they're doing what they're supposed to do, I mean, he's 6 or she's 6, so it's not exactly, there's not a lot of demands on the child, but are they participating in whatever schooling is going on right now? Are they doing activities with the family? If they're doing those things, and this is something that happens, at a certain time during transitions, or is the child getting tired, let them shred. Of all the self-soothing things that a child could do, there's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't put any limit on that as long as it's not interfering with day-to-day life. So if it's something that just happens at a certain time, go for it. I would absolutely say that's fine. We have kids who do that, who shred material. I think it's a perfectly fine thing to do.
Yeah, my own son likes to flip pages in a book. His teachers call it reading, but that's his.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yep. Another mom, is coming in, Lori, saying that they're also on week 3 of home learning, And she's found that her son is really starting to engage with the online classes and Zoom meetings, and he seems to be
Good.
adjusting pretty well. So I think that there's, a lot of positive success stories that if we can stick
Yes.
through it, it will get
Yep.
easier.
Yeah.
And finding
Yeah.
what works for you, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got
The other thing I would do to use that technology is even just to give yourself a break, reach out to family members, grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends, and have them do some things over Zoom with the kids. We do at Latham, we have some of the kids whose parents chose to take them home during this time. And 3 times a week at night, we do a story time. It's half an hour. And I'm positive that during that half hour, that parents are off camera, drinking a glass of wine, not having to be right with their child. Even if it's just a few minutes that someone could do a distance game, a virtual game, read them a story, it gives you a second to not have to be there. And it's a really important thing if you've been spending the entire day with your child to have somebody just entertain them for a few minutes. It's been really, really successful.
I love that idea. I feel like I get a purely gem tip from every one of these webinars, and that may be the one. I'm thinking I'm going to call all of, the grandparents and ask them if they'll read to them every night.
Yeah.
A great, great tip.
Yeah.
All right. So this is something I think many of us struggle with, and it's a picking question. So some of our loved ones, they're going to pick their fingers, or they're going to pick at sores on their body. What about noses, right? So it's the same idea. They're picking at something until it causes damage. Advice for us, Patrice.
Yeah. So unfortunately, when you start seeing picking, you can pretty much guarantee that it's just going to get worse until you intervene. Nose picking is a really big deal, especially if they're drawing blood, because they're going to do damage. They can do some pretty serious damage. It's not something that you can just ignore and hope it goes away, because it's not going to. What we typically see is that picking happens for one of 2 reasons: boredom, they don't even realize they're doing it, or during times of anxiety. Transitions, falling asleep can be a really popular time to pick anywhere. If it's to the point where blood is being drawn, what you need to do is put some sort of barrier in so that habit stops, right? Because it's just a habit. It's a dangerous one, but it's a habit. If there's blood being drawn from the picking, I would put some sort of barrier on their hands. I think if it's to that point where they're already starting to do damage to the tissue, boxing gloves, anything that's going to keep their finger from going up their nose. Even winter gloves could do it. Fencing gloves have been used before, because there really isn't a way. Normally we would say if it was the leg, you'd say to wrap the leg or to put tights on. There's really no way that you could or ever should block the nose. So you would have to put something on their hands to do that. The nice thing about it is that once that habit is broken, they typically don't start doing it again unless there's a big event, event that causes a lot of stress. So if you can put some sort of barrier, I would suggest doing that, because as much as you want to hope that it will go away on its own, it won't.
Right. Yeah, picking is tough. We've been there, and I find it it kind of comes and it goes, it wanes and ebbs a little bit. So hang in there.
But once you break that habit, it's less likely to start up again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and would you so the the attack on question to skin picking, are these strategies applicable for any and all types, or would you change strategies dependent on where the picking is taking place? So earlier it was the nose, now it's the bottom of the feet.
Yeah, no. Even if it's rectal picking, it's the same answer. It's something that you just hope they never start doing, because once they start doing it, it's super hard to get them to stop unless you have some sort of barrier in place. And the bottom of the feet is actually one of the easier places to stop, because you can use tights. That's something that will stop it in a matter of just a couple of weeks if you keep the tights on. because they can't get to it. And once they can't get to it, they usually just move on to something else. And it's not something that, I can't pick my feet, so I'll pick another place, because they usually pick one spot that they really like to pick. And once you stop them from doing that, they typically move on and stop that behavior. And like I said, it doesn't usually come back unless something triggers their anxiety again, something big.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about these are all common behaviors. How about arguing? So
Yeah.
you want your child to do anything, and their immediate response is to start arguing with you. How do we address this? Do we need to address their concerns, which is what they're trying to project and through their arguing, or do we need to nip it in the bud and ignore? What do we do?
Yeah. So you're not going to win. So I think we all know that, right? You're not going to win the argument. There's a couple of things that you can do, especially for kids who are readers, who are a little bit older. When you ask someone with PWS to do something, like if there's a command, you're almost always going to get a no at first, even if it's something good. It's just they assume that it's something that they're going to have to argue with you about. One of the best things that I found is that if it's really time to do something, if you really need to get something done, if there's a task, if you have a command, is to write it down, hand it to them, and walk away. And then that gives them the time to see what the question is, to see what the command is, to see what the next step is. And then it gives them time before they have to come back and argue with you, that they can kind of go through it in their mind. I think that sometimes we don't give enough thought to the fact that people with PWS have typically, and you can't generalize it, but for the most part, have really slow processing speed. So they're already saying no before they even realize what you just said. So if they are a reader, they can read that and process it in their time. And that usually is very effective. If they're non-readers or if they're pre-readers, you could use some sort of storyboard or some sort of picture, a visual, to let them know what's coming next. If there really is a hard no and it's not a safety issue, that may be one of those things that you need to just go on to the next thing. And there very well could be a valid point. So hearing them out without arguing back, because that's just going to add to it, you might find out what they're worried about, what the problem is, why they don't want to do this. But I think more often than not, it's about processing speed than anything.
So what I'm hearing is we should give them a moment to think about it.
Yep.
Let them say or speak their concern. Maybe we should not internalize it as arguing, but it's their way of communicating, and then restate what we would like to happen.
Right, exactly.
And then at some point,
and if it's a hard no, just give up. Yeah.
I find myself walking away frequently.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all you can do.
So let's talk about siblings again. Anne has two daughters who are similar in age, 8 and 7. The older daughter has Prader-Willi, who is 8. And she feels that her younger daughter without PWS is often just giving in to the older daughter. Sometimes it's just because it's not important, but sometimes it's because the child with PWS is just getting so worked up that the younger, has to walk away.
Yeah.
So how do we handle those situations between the two siblings so that one sibling isn't getting walked over or the short end of the stick?
Yeah. So that is a PWS issue. It's also a birth order issue. I think that a lot of younger siblings do that to keep the peace. As the youngest of 4, I can absolutely attest to that. There are times when the younger sibling, if they have a sibling with PWS and the typical child is younger, there is going to be a lifetime of this happening, because at some point, and usually in the next few years, the child with PWS is going to see the younger child advance past them. And that's a really hard time. usually happens around high school graduation, going to college, certainly getting married. There are things that will happen in their life that this is going to be really, really challenging. Right now, at 8 and 7, unless the 8-year-old is trying to make the 7-year-old do something that isn't right, I actually think it's an okay dynamic. You don't want her to be a wallflower or be the one who's always not getting her way, right? The one who's never getting her way. But if it really is a matter of keeping the peace, it sounds like the 7-year-old is pretty advanced and already knows how to get through the day successfully. I wouldn't worry too much about that unless there's something that the 8-year-old is asking the 7-year-old to do that she shouldn't be doing.
Great. We have a few attendees with their hands raised. So Vincent, I'm going to try taking you off mute so that you can go ahead and ask your question directly. Vincent, are you there? Okay. So we're having an audio issue. Vincent did submit a question, so I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, Patrice. And
Yeah.
Vincent, I'll try to unmute you again shortly while you. Oh, your audio might be there. Are you there now?
I'm trying to be.
There you are. We can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, we have 2 boys with Prader-Willi syndrome, and the younger one is 14, soon to be 15. He has extremely aggressive behaviors, damaging property, hurting other people, animals in the house. And I know in my question it was pretty simplified. We use his electronics as a consequence for these behaviors, and we try not to give those consequences in the midst of those behaviors because, of course, that's just going to escalate if that's even possible. But they are given afterwards, and it does make him think, I believe, and he regrets the loss of the electronics, not remorseful about his behaviors, but he does regret the loss of his electronics.
Yeah.
Then if we wait too long, that can escalate into another behavior. Is there, I don't know, is there something else we can explore as a consequence? Because I don't know that taking the electronics away is, really effective in that way.
Yeah. Typically, consequences aren't effective. If it's working, the electronics, then keep doing it. By all means, if it's working, do it. And that's kind of one of the things about working with people with this syndrome is you kind of do what works until it doesn't work, and then you try something else. But as a rule, consequences typically don't work, mostly because in that moment, he probably wouldn't be able to control himself if he wanted to. I don't think that there's anything that you could put over his head for him to say to himself, I better not do this right now, or A, B, and C will happen. In that moment when they are being really aggressive like that, and I know that's something that absolutely can happen, and I'm sorry that that's happening because it sounds like it's pretty bad as far as other people in the house and animals. I don't think that he's in control of himself in that moment to do it. I think that there's some things you can do when he's not aggressive, when he's feeling okay, to kind of work on figuring out what is triggering him, adding a ton of different coping skills into his life, anything that can help him to calm himself down. But once they get to that point where they're being aggressive, there is no turning back mentally or physically. It's really the work that needs to be done around what triggers him, what flips him to get aggressive, and to help him figure that out, and to work with him on calming himself down when he's starting to get to that point. Then that's really something that should happen with a psychologist, maybe with a psychiatrist. There could be meds that could help. That's not my wheelhouse, but there definitely could be, to try to figure out what is setting him off like that, because something is. And really the key is going to be to try to figure out what's doing that and what can he do to help himself before he gets to that point. But I don't think there's anything that you could threaten to take away that's going to change him in that moment, because it's not his choice to do that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, Patrice, we've had the same observations. The technology can be highly engaging. I don't want to say motivational, but when it gets taken away, oh, the drama that entails in our house.
Yeah.
We've struggled with consequences versus positive motivators, and we've found every time we try to do consequences, it just blows up in our face.
Yeah.
We're still working on it.
It really is. Yeah, it really is about figuring out what is making him so upset that he's getting to that point. And it could take a lifetime to figure that out, but I do think it's important to really try to look and figure out what's triggering him and what you can do about it before it gets to that point.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about managing food a little bit. So we've got a question. Gosh, our loved ones are at home. The kitchen's right there. The pantry's right in our face.
Yeah.
All of us are struggling to perhaps not snack all day long. So what about our loved ones with Prader-Willi syndromes? Some of them could be demanding snacks frequently. Carol's mentioning that her daughter's constantly demanding snacks from a locked cabinet and tantruming when she's denied. How can we help?
Yeah, I saw something a family was doing that I loved, and it was a snack box, and it was really super healthy things. But it was a box that was out, and it was an only child, so that was a little bit easier for them to do. And there were like 4 or 5 different snacks in there, and she had full access to it. If she ate it all at once, then there were no snacks for the rest of the day. And what the mom said was that after a few days, she was spacing them out. And they were all really low calorie, totally fine to have. If the child's a little bit older, I think that would be easier. If we're talking about a young child, 4, 5, 6, that would be a little harder to do. But is it different? What I'm curious about is what were they doing on weekends and holidays and vacations prior to this? Is it worse now than it was? Like, what were you doing on the weekends? Because they weren't in school then. So why is it different? Why is the asking for snacks different now?
Right. Carol, if you want to go into more detail, if you raise your hand, I'll unmute you so that you can ask some of this directly. There we go. Okay, I'm going to unmute you right now. You there, Carol? I see you. Okay. So Carol, you're unmuted. I'm going to it looks like we might be having some audio difficulties. You are welcome to type into the question box if you like, or you can keep working on your audio. Yeah, we're not getting her audio. So Carol, just feel free to type in any additional information you might have, and we will come back to this specific topic here. And I'm just looking
because that falls under the category of safety. So if they're having a tantrum every time they want a snack, then they're going to have a tantrum. That's not something you can give into, because that comes down to a safety issue. So it may just be a matter of she's going to tantrum and you're not going to give her a snack. And that's an unfortunate answer, but because accessing food and wanting more food and getting more food every time you tantrum, that falls into the category of, sorry, we can't do that.
We have a few parents who are giving ideas of things that they're doing. I love that we have sharing going on. One mom says she gives open access to bubbly water, 0 calorie. Daughter loves it. It gives her some independence. And it's it's not giving food, but a drink option. This is just another mom. She's saying that they also deal with aggression issues. So, Vincent, you're clearly not the only one out there. There's a lot of us
not at all.
Are struggling. And there can be property damage that's involved as well. Tammy is just saying that, you know, her son sees a psychiatrist and a behavioralist, and he's on meds. And, you know, there's still outbursts, but she says that when she gives a consequence, it always makes it worse. So I think okay, so Tammy's asking again about triggers. So how do you identify these triggers? Do you have advice for
Yeah. So what you want to do, and this is what any behaviorist would do, is you would do an ABA. So you would look at exactly what was happening. So you have a behavior, right? Then you go backwards and you look at what happened immediately before the behavior, what happened a few minutes before the behavior, what happened an hour before, what happened that morning. And every single time there's a behavior, you sit down and you actually draw it, right? You put a box, this is the behavior, and you work backwards. And this is what, if you had a behaviorist in your house, this is exactly what they would be doing. They would look at every single incident, small to large, and they would work backwards from several hours, from 1 moment to a minute to 5 minutes, going back several hours in the day. And over time, and it usually takes maybe 10, 12 behaviors, you will start to see a pattern of something. And what's hard about this is it's different for every kid. It could be that there was a disappointment. It could be that there was something physical that was bothering them. It could be a sensory issue. It could be an issue of they're frustrated because they were asked to do something that they didn't understand, and that goes into executive functioning disorder. So the bottom line is you see the behavior. You can't do anything before the behavior. But once the behavior occurs, you work backwards and you write down every single thing you can think about that happened that day. And over time, and it usually won't take that long, you'll start to see patterns, and then you can start to address those particular issues. That's how you find a trigger.
And I would add that in our experience, a lot of Jaden's behaviors are related to anxiety around the future. Mm-hmm. So for example, we're going to Disneyland for his birthday, and he knows we're going to Disneyland for his birthday. I can guarantee you within 5 days of going to Disneyland, we're going to start getting behavior every single day for what seems to be ridiculous things or random things. But now that I've seen this pattern enough, I know that it's not always what's happening in the present, but it's also what they're thinking about. And sometimes it just takes time to figure that out. You know, it's taken us years to identify that that's the case for him. We have a couple more hands raised, so I'm going to try to take people off mute and let's see if we can get some audio. So the next person, Jamie, I'm going to try to unmute you. So Jamie, if you're ready.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jamie.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I was just typing my response. I wasn't sure if I should, which way we were going. We missed the beginning of the meeting, but yes, hi. I have a 27-year-old son who has the syndrome, and he has lived in a group home since he was just shy of 18, actually, about a month shy of 18, because as the other gentleman spoke, and several of you have alluded to, he had severe behavioral issues, very violent, aggressive, for a number of years prior to his changing placement. It was just very dangerous, really life-threatening for a number of years. I just wanted to throw in a couple of things that I have found work, just because I get how just the only word that's coming to my mind is desperate these times can be. He's been with me here in Atlanta. His group home is in South Carolina. He's now been with me for this is week 5. It's the first time since he's lived in his group home that he has been home for this long. Normally, the cap is about 5 days before he starts to what I classify as fall apart. He has been extremely successful this time. I think part of it is the severity of the situation. We've talked a lot about what it means for him to be here and what the restrictions of him going back and what that could mean, that type of thing. But the other things that are working are working for positive rewards, which I think you guys have also discussed, but having something within usually, but for him, and I know it's dependent upon the person, but 3 to 5 days in his range of working with good choices and good behavior towards, positive reinforcement. And we had worked with a behaviorist prior to his placement. So that was unfortunately, it was late in his, it was close to that time, 8:17, but very successfully. And the other thing we're doing, which has been tremendous, it's a lot of work, but is we're doing a lot of physical exercise. We're doing basically, we had a foster dog for about 3 weeks. He just went home last weekend, but we were walking twice a day, in the morning and then right before dinner. And I found actually Logan for a period of time had that built into his IEP when he was in school, for 30 minutes on a treadmill every day or walking every day, because I have found that really he will exhaust himself in that way, and then there's less energy available for violent, aggressive outbursts and actually great. Food stealing. He hasn't been stealing food either. So just want to throw that out.
I love that. That's great.
I love that people are sharing what's working for them.
Yeah.
It's so helpful to hear from other folks. Mm-hmm. Here's another sibling question. You know, we're always worried about our siblings. So we have a typical son and a daughter with PWS, and she's mean to her brother a lot. And Mandy's worried that her son, who does not have PWS, is missing out on things because his sister refuses to do an activity. So how do you manage
that's the reality. So we run into this. There are so many stories that are similar to this from siblings, and I think that I think that we need to address siblings in general. I think as a community, we need to do a better job with that, because we are asking these children to do something that's hard for adults to do. I think that, again, it's using any resource that you have to help extended family, grandparents, friends, to be able to get him out and do the things that he wants to do. Because if she's refusing to leave the house or refusing to do the activity that he wants to do, you're building up some serious resentment there, with good reason. And he should be resentful. But that's going to affect both of them later in life, because it's going to be very hard for him to have a good relationship with his sister if there's this foundation of, I missed out on all of these things that I wanted to do because of her. So if there's any possibility of letting him, or having a way for him to do those activities with anybody, with somebody else, if you're on your way to do something and she's refusing, is there anybody else who can take him to do that? Or stay with her while you take him to do that, which actually would be even better. Because she is unintentionally setting up a lot of resentment for him, and he's going to carry that with him. Yeah. And a lot of families deal with this.
So we were fortunate to start getting respite hours this last year, and we use our respite hours to take our other kids to their sporting events or out to dinner with friends. And that way our son with Prader-Willi can't dictate to our family. We get to go out. And he actually loves it. He loves having his special friend come over and they watch a movie together. We were really guilty about it in the beginning, feeling that we were splitting up the family and we should all be together. But everyone is happy with that situation. Now, granted, that's not helping us right now, because right now we're all stuck at home.
Yep. That's right.
So we're not able to leave him behind, but my husband and I will tag team. And sometimes we put Jaden, if he wants to watch a movie, we let him do the movie while we are doing activities with the other kids.
Sure.
We don't exclude anyone, but it gives us an opportunity to kind of split people up and give everyone a special time. Here's a great question from Megan about aggressive behavior. So you've missed the trigger, you're mid-meltdown, there's nothing you can do to rationalize with your loved one. Is there anything that you can do in that moment to shorten the duration or decrease the intensity? Don't talk. And just get everything out of the way that could get hurt. Oftentimes in the middle of an event like that, an aggressive episode, we want to try to talk people down, and we want to try to, anything really, threaten, make promises. I think everyone's probably tried everything.
But the truth is they are so overstimulated in that moment that the very best thing to do is nothing. Get out of the way. Don't say anything. Clear the room. Let it happen. They'll almost always fall asleep afterwards. Let them sleep. And a lot of times when they'll wake up, they won't even remember what happened or won't be able to explain to you what happened. But they're in that moment, once they get to that point, no, there's nothing you can do to talk them down from that. No, nothing that I've found.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned leaving them alone. What if they're getting destructive? Would you still leave the room, or would you stay present
No.
for safety?
No. Yeah, I would stay present to make sure they didn't hurt themselves. Yeah, but I would clear the room. What I mean by clear the room is move the vases, move the dog, move the baby. That's what I mean by clear the room. But you would have to stay there to make sure they didn't hurt themselves.
Okay. We have one more person who's had her hand raised for quite a while, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Becky. Let's see if you're there. Becky, are you still there? I'm not seeing any audio. Okay, sorry, Becky. I'm going to lower your hand, but if you raise it again, I'll try to unmute you. So we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to go back to.
Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Hey, sorry. To go back to like the skin picking on the feet. So
yeah.
My daughter on and off, that's been like her thing. And
yep.
Because usually what we'll do is we try to find like the Mepilex dressings that have like a cushion, because it's literally on the sole of her feet, and we love to go for walking as our exercise.
Yep.
So right now at this point, because we're confined, we're in North Carolina. We can't go to state parks because they're closed, and that's where we would go and do our hiking. And we do like 7 miles. So it's been a big change for her. And so we're trying to go and walk within our neighborhoods and whatever greenways that are available to us. But I'm noticing now it's gotten so bad. It's like even in her sleep, like she'll take her Band-Aids off, she'll take her socks off. And it's hard to keep it on when she has 2 other siblings. And I was just wondering, what are some other alternatives that I could do that might deter her from taking her socks off?
So if it's able to be taken off easily, she's going to take it off. If there's something you can put on her hands, that would be best, because then she can go to pick, but she's not going to be able to really get an edge to be able to pick. The other thing you could try to do is put Vaseline, like thick Vaseline, on her feet before she goes to bed. Now that's a lot of laundry and you're going to do a lot of cleaning up, but you're not going to be dealing with picking. When you can use something slick like that, that's best. There are places that you don't want to put that on your body, right? Because you don't want to have that layer that's going to keep infection in. But if she's picking her feet and it's not like deep and it's not infected, I would use some sort of either, you don't want to use too much bacitration, but something like a Vaseline that's going to keep it really, really slick. What you want to do is at all costs prevent her from getting an edge with her fingernail. That's the goal. So either she has something on her hands that she can't take off at night. I know parents who have used, who put on gloves, like the boxing gloves, not the great big ones, but like the ones they practice with, and not tie them on, but put them on so they can't just easily slip them off their wrist. That's helped people in the past. Using the Vaseline has helped people. Tights on at night it may be uncomfortable, but it will help her because she's not going to be able to easily take those off. Any kind of barrier that you can think of just to get her to stop that habit is going to be helpful.
Patrice, we are at the top of the hour. So the great news is we got through a lot of questions today.
Yes.
Your advice is always incredibly helpful. So I hope that everyone on the call today was really able to take out some good, meaningful tips. Just as a reminder to all of you, we've recorded a number of webinars over the last couple of weeks. They are all available on the FPWR blog. So you can check out the slides, you can download the slides, you can watch the webinars, you can read an outline of the content that was shared. Some of the topics that we currently have are at-home learning strategies. We have a 20-minute podcast with Patrice, who just gave some really great advice on how to handle the current situation. We also have a mental health one-page handout for you. And I would encourage all of you to download that handout, read it. Our loved ones are at greater risk of mental health issues, and being under amounts of stress can heighten that risk. So take a look, make sure that you know what signs and symptoms may be indicative of a decline in mental health. And also, if you're a caregiver and you're struggling right now, Lauren Roth did a really great podcast, 7 tips on how you can de-stress yourself. I might need to go and reread or re-listen to that podcast, because these are stressful times. Don't be hard on yourselves. Do what you can to de-stress. And we will do our best to continue to bring you all these resources, again, posting them all on the FPWR blog for you so that you can have continuous access. Patrice, can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm hoping we can do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.